Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. At AM 630.
Good morning, everybody. It is 7:06 on WMAL, where Washington comes to talk, but we are not in the studio in Washington. No, as you can tell, we're across the river in Virginia at the Metro 29 Diner, and we are very pleased at this hour to be joined live and in person by former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. Why? I'm so excited that
I was afraid you were going to say Jim Wright for a minute there.
We had just been talking about Jim Wright, and that's why I got confused.
Say how quickly they forget him, and here I was.
And may we add, former candidate for president
That's
this
right.
time around. We remember that.
Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to have you here, and we want to get right to it because there's so many things we want to ask you about and we want you to weigh in on. First of all, let me just say that if you look at the national polls right now, the Real Clear Politics average of polls has, right now, Obama leading by 0.1. 0.1 nationally. And a lot of people have said, well, the polls really don't reflect reality. You have sort of been on record of late as saying you don't think that the polls are anywhere close to being right.
Well, I actually think that Gallup came the closest to explaining it when they went back and looked at all of their data for September, which was 19,000 interviews. And they said the universe they're looking at is different than 2008. All of these polls, the Washington Post, etc., all norm their data. So they get their data and they say, well, this will be +8 Democrat, because that's what it was in 2008.
Right.
But in fact, in 2010, it was a Republican electorate by a big margin. And so Gallup went back and they just said, if you just take 19,000 as a sample, which is an enormous sample, they're seeing a lot more Republican enthusiasm, a lot less Democratic enthusiasm. They think the electorate itself will be different than it was in 2008. So start there. If that's true, then this will be a blowout. Second, I believe in the James Carville rule, which is incumbents get the last number. So if you say the president said by 0.1, my question would be, what is the total number? Is it 48.1, 47.1? It ain't 50.1.
Yeah.
And so he is likely to see all the difference go to Romney, which historically is true. In fact, Karl Rove wrote a piece yesterday pointing out that on the average, incumbents gain 1.1 points from whatever they stop. So if you're at 48, you get to be 49.1, which means you lose.
All right, so Handy, what do you think the final outcome will be? We're asking everybody to go on record.
Sure. I mean, I've said pretty much for last week. The baseline is 53-47 and 300-plus electoral votes.
Now, if it's that kind of margin, then we really probably won't have a electoral count issue.
No, I mean, you'll know election night by a clear margin, and you'll also, if it's 53-47, we'll pick up the Republicans will pick up the Senate.
Wow. Speaker Gingrich, you're uniquely qualified to answer this question. There's a handful of states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, Virginia, where it's very close, and suddenly there's announcements now that these Romney super PACs are going to start funneling a lot of money at the last minute into those states for a big ad buy. You were very close in a couple of states with Mitt Romney, and suddenly the same thing happened. Talk about what kind of effect that can have.
Well, it can be pretty big effect, but if you'll notice in the morning papers, the president's biggest supporter is actually the Service Employee Union, SEIU.
Yes.
And it's bigger than his super PAC. So I would say to all my liberal friends, oh, you mean the business community finally has a vehicle to match labor? And that's why you're upset, because you like the idea that labor could spend millions and millions of dollars and the union bosses could decide, but now, gosh, they actually have a competitor. That's what happened in Wisconsin. If Scott Walker had not had people able to spend the money, the unions would have drowned him. Once you got to an even playing field, Walker beat him by, I think, 6 or 8 points.
It's the only monopoly they like. And we're talking about business, of course. Gas prices are a huge issue right now across the country. And I know you're doing something kind of fun, actually just in about an hour from now here in Arlington, right? You're going to do a bit of a rollback at the gas pump?
We are. We're going to the Liberty gas station at 2300 Columbia Pike here in Arlington. And we're going to offer gasoline at the price it was the day Obama was sworn in.
What was that?
I think it was $1.87.
$1.84.
$1.84.
Wow.
Wait a second. Now our audience is leaving. They're all going to get it. Wait, stay here, folks. They got gas. We got pancakes.
It's a limited time offer because we run out of money. But we're trying to drive home the point. Everybody who fills up their gas tank this weekend is paying about $2 a gallon more thanks to Barack Obama.
But you know that's because the economy is doing so well. That's what the president said in the debate. Gas prices are high because the economy is doing well.
Let me just suggest that the gas prices are high because this president is anti-petroleum, anti-natural gas, anti-coal, and he invested billions in technology that isn't technically or commercially ready.
I want to talk about what's happened in Benghazi. Maybe I want to talk more about the things that did not happen in Benghazi. It seems that finally, in the last few days, we are starting to get some mainstream attention on this story. But as you look at what happened in Benghazi and the attack on our consulate, the death of our ambassador and 3 other Americans, what are your questions?
Well, let me start and say I think the administration would be much better off to tell the truth and to outline what actually happened. I think what we would discover is that, in fact, they were trying to be reasonable people in an unreasonable world. And so the CIA apparently was providing some support out of Tripoli. They chartered a plane. They had 6 Americans and 16 Libyan contractors who went in and tried to be helpful. They had a 130-man Marine detachment sitting at Sigonella in Sicily. They apparently could have moved it, but decided not to move it because after the first attack was over, they thought maybe everything would be all right. And then by the time the second attack occurred, didn't seem to be timely.
It was too late.
And so you down this list of things that could have been done. The reason they get in trouble is that Obama said, I issued orders to take steps to protect people. Now, what they really did is they issued orders to start moving folks to someday, eventually, maybe protect people in the future. They didn't take steps to protect the people who
in
were
real
firefighting.
time.
Now, I've talked with somebody who's actually there. They had an almost 7-hour firefight.
Yeah.
And 7 hours, you're less than an hour from Sicily by jet in terms of putting a fighter aircraft overhead. You are less than about 2 hours by C-130 if you want to bring in the Marines. They just couldn't get there. And apparently, we now know from CBS, people thought the other night when I said there was a rumor that these emails existed. People thought I was exaggerating. CBS reported last night they have the emails in which apparently people were told, get ready, no, don't get ready. Get ready, don't get ready. And
stand up, stand down, stand up.
Indecision.
It was maddening.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question, if I could, and it has to do with this idea. The president says that if he is reelected, maybe we haven't grown the economy like we need to, but don't worry, because it's going to be all better because I'm going to have a secretary of business. Stony silence.
This is why we need a live camera so people can see.
Now, look, President Obama is telling you if he gets reelected, don't worry about unemployment because he won't be.
There it is. That's why you're one of the best guests to have. Actually, we're out of time, but I wanted to ask you, this is maybe the first time I've seen you in the last 2 years without your beautiful wife, Callista, with you. She just wrote a book, Land of the Pilgrim's Pride. This is a children's book. Is she out there? She's doing her own book circuit right now?
She and I are both going to be at the McLean Books a Million tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we're going to be signing her book and some of my books. And she would have been delighted to be here. She's getting ready. She sings at the Basilica, and this is All Souls Day, so she will be at the Basilica today. And then tomorrow we'll both be at McLean.
So she's got a book signing, and you're just sort of glomming along and bringing your books. You're trying to on the drafting
exactly
right.
So like Barack Obama, you are the eye candy, right?
Yeah. Aren't you Callista Gingrich's husband?
No one, you and I go back a long way. Nobody in the time we've known each other has ever suggested I was eye candy. And I think that's sufficiently bizarre. That's such a record for this morning.
I knew we would make news with this interview.
Former Speaker of the House, former presidential candidate. We are so happy that you could drop by.
Good to be here.
Newt Gingrich, everybody. Woo!